Warriors Nation, something interesting is brewing in Golden State. And no, it's not just about Steph lighting it up from deep. While Curry's heroics continue to steal the spotlight, there's a quieter, more under-the-radar story unfolding. And it's all about a young guard who might just be forcing Steve Kerr to make some tough decisions early in the season. Well, Richard, remember the name, because he's beginning to turn heads in a serious way. At first glance, his preseason numbers might not blow anyone away. 3 points in his debut against the Lakers? Not exactly eye-popping. But then, things started shifting. 9 points against Portland, 5 more against LA, and then boom, 13 points the second time around against the Blazers, shooting 3 of 5 from beyond the arc and grabbing 6 boards. That last performance wasn't just solid, it was meaningful. For a guard his size, to not only be improving offensively, but also pulling down rebounds and showing a growing feel for the flow of the game, that's something you can't ignore. Especially on a Warriors team that needs depth and versatility at the guard position. Now, let's be real. When Richard first got picked up, a lot of fans, myself included, weren't exactly thrilled. Late first-rounders getting standard NBA contracts often feels more like a gamble than a smart investment. We've seen it happen with other prospects, big promises, small results. I wasn't sold. I'll be honest, I wasn't even watching him closely during Summer League because I just didn't see the upside. But something's shifted over these last 4 games. He's not just playing better, he's earning trust. And in a Steve Kerr rotation, especially this early on, that's a big deal. And it makes you think, what does this mean for the rest of the roster? Because someone's minutes are going to shrink. Well, Richard is not just fighting for a spot. He's gunning for real rotation time. You don't give a 4-year contract to someone you plan to sit at the end of the bench. And if he keeps improving, showing effort on both ends, spacing the floor, crashing the boards, and hitting shots with confidence, that's exactly the kind of player this system thrives with. And that's exactly the kind of player who ends up taking someone else's role. Look around. Moses Moody, Buddy Hield, Jonathan Kuminga. These are guys who might start feeling the pressure. Not all of them at once, of course. Hield brings shooting and veteran presence. But if Richard keeps knocking down open looks and defending multiple positions, his case becomes stronger. Moody's been on the edge of the rotation before, and he's shown flashes but nothing consistent. Kuminga? Still a question mark. All the athleticism in the world, but this preseason hasn't been convincing. And if he doesn't start making a real impact soon, it's not hard to see Kerr leaning on someone like Richard, who just fits more cleanly with the system. Someone who knows how to play within the flow, rather than trying to force the issue. And listen, I'm not saying Richard is the next Jordan Poole or Gary Payton II, or even the next Patty McCaw. Though let's talk about that comparison for a second. Patty was that underrated piece who ended up playing big minutes during the Warriors' title runs. Remember, he went back-to-back with Golden State before grabbing a 3rd ring with Toronto. He was the first to three-peat since the Shaq and Kobe Lakers. Richard might not be on that level yet, but the similarities are there, both underappreciated guys who earned their spot with grit and hustle, not hype. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The emergence of Richard could also signal something else. Flexibility when it comes to future moves. The kind of flexibility that opens doors to bigger trades, deeper rotations, and maybe even a splash at the trade deadline. Because if your young guys are stepping up, it gives you freedom. It means you can include someone like Kuminga or Moody in a trade package and still have confidence that your bench isn't going to collapse. And that brings us to the rumor that's been floating around, and it's time to give it some serious thought. The possibility of Bam Adebayo becoming a Warrior. Now, before you roll your eyes, hear me out. A few weeks ago, this would have sounded like a fantasy. But as the preseason unfolds, Miami is making some very telling moves. They just gave Nikola Jovic a solid extension, a guy who, unlike Bam, actually has some shooting range. You can't ignore that. Bam is a strong defender, undersized but physical enough to match up with the bigs of the league. But offensively, he's limited. He doesn't stretch the floor, he doesn't shoot threes, and that's a big deal in today's NBA. Especially for a team like Miami, which is looking to stay competitive but also inject youth and shooting into their roster. Plus, think about what Miami did last season. They peaked with that finals appearance in 2023, and since then, things have been trending down. Pat Riley, the mastermind behind that franchise, has always been about staying a step ahead. He's not the type to hang on to a player too long. And with Bam set to make over $37 million this season, and more beyond that, you have to wonder how much longer they're going to commit to a core that might have already seen its ceiling. Enter Golden State. If you're the Warriors and you're looking at your current roster with the goal of making one last big run with Steph, Klay, and Draymond, Bam makes perfect sense. He's a high IQ defender who could thrive in Kerr's system, switch on to guards, play small ball five, and cover for defensive lapses. But more than that, if Richard continues to rise, the Warriors suddenly have a surplus of young talent that becomes tradable. Imagine a package of Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, and Buddy Hield. That's two promising young wings and a veteran shooter on a manageable deal. Kuminga is on a team-friendly contract with a club option and a trade kicker. That's valuable. If he fits, great. If not, a team like Miami can move on easily. Moody is a reliable two-way option. And Buddy Hield, while not a long-term piece, gives Miami immediate spacing. Meanwhile, Golden State gets the defensive anchor they've lacked since prime Draymond. And suddenly, their core has a renewed shot at another title. Again, this all hinges on how the early season plays out. If Kuminga steps up and proves he belongs, maybe the Warriors stand pat. But if Richard keeps this pace and Kuminga doesn't, you have to consider the options, because momentum matters. That's been the story of the Warriors dynasty, capitalizing on rhythm, confidence, and chemistry. Right now, Richard has momentum, and it's becoming harder and harder to ignore. And with that momentum, the Warriors are heading into what feels like a statement preseason finale, a matchup with the Clippers. Now, don't get it twisted, it's still preseason, but both teams know this game means something. For the Warriors, it's a tune-up, a chance to solidify rotations, test new lineups, and finish strong heading into the regular season opener against the Lakers. But more than that, it's about payback. Remember last year? The Clippers were one of the teams that kept Golden State stuck in that dreaded play-in zone. That final push for the 6th seed fell short, and a lot of that had to do with games against LA. So now, it's about setting the tone early. Winning 4 out of 5 in the preseason isn't just good for morale, it's a message. It tells the rest of the league that this version of the Warriors, with a mix of hungry youth and championship experience, is ready to compete. And it gives players like Richard another chance to prove they belong, not just on a roster, but in the rotation and maybe even in the closing lineups when it counts most. With all eyes on the Clippers game, there's this feeling that the Warriors are walking into a crossroads moment, not just for the preseason, but for the trajectory of the entire season ahead. The Clippers are rolling into the matchup with one of the deepest rosters in the league, and even though it's still October, there's no question that both sides are going to treat this like a measuring stick. This isn't just a preseason wrap-up. This is the first real glimpse of where the Warriors stand against one of the Western Conference's most complete squads. Take a look at who's expected to be active for that game. Kawhi Leonard, James Harden, Chris Paul, John Collins, Brook Lopez, Bradley Beal, and Bogdan Bogdanović might be game-time decisions, but even without them, this Clippers team is stacked. You've got defense, shooting, size, ball movement, everything you need to make a serious playoff push. And more importantly, everything you need to give the Warriors real problems. So if Golden State shows up and controls this game, if they impose their pace, outwork them on both ends, and close out possessions, that's not just preseason momentum. That's a message for Steve Kerr and the coaching staff. This is the perfect opportunity to see who's ready. Not in theory, not in scrimmages, but ready to actually contribute in meaningful minutes when the real pressure hits. And for players like Richard, this is the kind of game where he can solidify his role. We've already seen what he can do in smaller matchups, but now comes the real test. Can he produce against playoff-caliber rotations? Can he hold his own when the game tightens, the rotations shorten, and the defensive intensity ramps up? That's what's going to tell us if he's here to stay or just riding a preseason wave. And that's also why this Clippers game isn't just about Richard. It's about every fringe rotation player who's fighting to stick. It's about seeing how well Moses Moody responds to the growing pressure. It's about watching Kuminga and whether he starts asserting himself instead of floating through possessions. Because let's be honest, Jonathan Kuminga is running out of excuses. This was supposed to be his breakout year. The Warriors cleared the deck for him to step into a bigger role, gave him all the tools, gave him a clear runway. And yet, through the preseason, it feels like he's still unsure of what he wants to be. That indecisiveness is dangerous, because this isn't the same Warriors team as before. There are guys hungry for minutes, guys like Richard who are treating every possession like a job interview. And if Kuminga keeps drifting, keeps hesitating, it won't matter how athletic he is. It won't matter how high his ceiling is. This coaching staff has always favored effort and consistency over raw potential. And if Richard brings those two things nightly, he's going to keep climbing, and Kuminga's going to find himself watching more and playing less. And while all this unfolds, the looming possibility of a major trade still hangs in the air. That's the part people forget. As the season progresses, front offices around the league start making real decisions. Pat Riley is no stranger to that game. If Miami's season starts spiraling, they're not going to wait until the offseason to start reshuffling the deck. That's not how Riley operates. And if he sees the writing on the wall, that his core isn't enough to make another finals push, moving a high-cost player like Bam Adebayo becomes not just a possibility, but a logical step. Think about the ripple effects. Miami could get younger, more versatile, and more financially flexible in one swing. Jonathan Kuminga gives them a high-upside wing who might thrive in a new system with more freedom. Buddy Hield brings elite spacing, something Miami desperately needs. And Moses Moody offers a two-way presence that could fit perfectly in Eric Spoelstra's system. Add in a potential pick swap or even a future first-rounder, and suddenly it becomes a compelling offer, especially when the alternative is paying over $37 million a year for a big who doesn't stretch the floor and might be peaking right now. From a Warriors perspective, the calculus is simple. You get Bam Adebayo, and your defense instantly improves. You get a player who can switch everything, anchor the paint, and cover for the natural aging curve of Draymond Green. It also allows Kerr to experiment more with small ball lineups without sacrificing rim protection. Imagine a closing lineup of Steph, Klay, Wiggins, Draymond, and Bam. That's elite defensive versatility and playoff experience at every position. The key, though, is timing. Golden State doesn't want to panic. They're not going to make a move just to shake things up. They want to see how the first month of the season goes, evaluate who's really stepping up, and then strike if the opportunity presents itself. And that's why games like this upcoming one against the Clippers are so important. It's a test for the roster, but also a test for the front office. Because if Richard holds his own, if Kuminga continues to stall, and if Moody floats somewhere in between, the writing may be on the wall before the new year even hits. Before we continue, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any exclusive Dubs updates. Let's keep going. Whispers are swirling around the NBA world, and if the chatter proves true, it could signal one of the most electrifying reunions in recent basketball memory. Rumor has it that KLAY Thompson, the sharpshooting maestro of the Golden State Warriors, might be returning to the Bay Area, reigniting the legendary Splash Brothers duo with Stephen Curry. Fans across the league are buzzing with anticipation, speculating whether the Warriors are about to regain the offensive firepower that once terrorized defenses from coast to coast. Insiders suggest that front office meetings have intensified over the past weeks, with a laser focus on bringing KLAY back into the fold. While nothing has been confirmed, sources close to the team hint at discussions that could see the three-time NBA champion donning the blue and gold once more. The possibility alone has sparked a flurry of social media activity, with fan accounts flooding timelines with graphics, memes, and countdowns to what could be a historic comeback. The narrative almost writes itself. Two of the league's most feared perimeter shooters finally sharing the court again, Curry's crafty handles paired with KLAY's signature catch-and-shoot prowess. Analysts are already speculating about the impact on the Warriors' offensive schemes, imagining lineups that could rival the dynasty teams of the past decade. If KLAY returns, Golden State wouldn't just regain a player. They'd reclaim an identity, a swagger, and a chemistry that once made them nearly unstoppable. Yet, as with all rumors, caution is warranted. Contract details, health considerations, and long-term team strategy remain under wraps, leaving fans and pundits alike to wonder. Is this a well-timed reunion or just wishful thinking amplified by excitement? Either way, the idea of the Splash Brothers reuniting is enough to send ripples through the NBA, reminding everyone why Golden State basketball has always been a spectacle. For now, we watch, we speculate, and we dream, because if this rumor materializes, the Bay Area is about to feel the heat all over again. Stay updated exclusively with the latest Dub Nation news. Subscribe to our channel and hit the like button to keep getting daily updates on the Warriors. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Your input is essential for the Dubs community. Stay tuned for the next video.